where you feel a little bit of fear in your heart, or maybe a bit of imposter syndrome, and you still go for it. And once I do one of those moves, most of the time, they've paid very well. And for me, those are the bold moves that I've made in my life, in my career, in my personal life, that have really shaped the path and where I am today.
Welcome, everyone, to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's topic, bold moves to achieve your own 1% edge. And to help us navigate the topic, I'm thrilled to welcome Evisa Kekezi. Hopefully I said that right.
You did, Carlos.
Vice President covering EMEA and APAC for Workiva.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm trying. Sometimes I mess these things up. So welcome to the show, Evisa. I'm really happy to have you as a guest.
Likewise, delighted to be here. And I know we'll have a great conversation. The topic 1% edge, it's very close to my heart. So
excellent. In fact, at the end, hopefully we can talk about the fact that you recently completed a portion of the famous Camino de Santiago, which is this famous walk in Spain that hopefully we can circle back with at the end, because I thought that was awesome.
Oh, I'd love to.
All right. How about we start out by framing the topic a little bit? Like, what do you mean by bold moves in, kind of achieving your own 1% edge journey?
Sure. For me, bold moves have always been things that I thought I wasn't quite ready for. Where you feel a little bit of fear in your heart, or maybe a bit of imposter syndrome, and you still go for it. And once I do one of those moves, most of the time, they've paid very well. And for me, those are the bold moves that I've made in my life, in my career, in my personal life, that have really shaped the path and where I am today.
Excellent. I think that, I can relate a lot to that, right? Because, in my career, there's been moves I haven't made, and then there's been moves that I have, and you never regret the ones you have. They worked out in some way or fashion. I always learned something from each one of them. They may have not been like a home run great, but I always learned some of it. What might have been some of the bold moves that you've had through your career, some of those tough decisions you had to work your way through?
The first kind of bold move, when I tell this story to my own daughter, who is 16 now, she finds it fascinating and she laughs at it. But it was my first bold move, and probably shaped a lot of the future direction that I took. I was 15 years old, or maybe a bit younger, and it was this American company who had come in town and was hiring people that could speak English and could do some sort of computer basic skills, right? Microsoft and Excel. And I was 15. And my sister's friends, who were 18, 19, 20-year-olds in university, they applied. Some of them got these good jobs, very highly paid jobs at the time, very highly paid jobs in Albania, where I'm from. And I decided to go for it. So I went in an interview. Interviewing for what I thought was an admin role. I guess my English was a bit better than the rest of, the candidates that they saw. So they passed me from one interview to another. And at the end of the day, I ended up getting the job of being the personal assistant of the CEO of the company. And I was 15 years old. And I never told them I was 15 years old. I got the job. I got a full-time job. And every time someone asked me, I said, I'm 18. And that was the first kind of bold move where I was absolutely not qualified for it, probably. But I believed in myself. I went for it. I shoot my shot, and it worked.
That's amazing. We're not recommending anybody lie about their age, but I do love the story. I thought that was awesome.
You got to do what you got to do.
So where'd you go from there?
That was a 1 year kind of stint. It became a full-time job, but I also was in high school, right? So I had to finish high school, and despite earning incredibly a good amount of money, I'm also I've always been very, very focused on education. So I quit the job and I went back to finish high school, and I worked in kind of part-time jobs to supplement the living. I went to Italy to study, and there I made another big bold move, I would say. It was my dream to go and study in Italy, Rome, in one of the best universities in Europe, La Sapienza. Um, Economics, it ticked all the boxes. The reality was that it was very expensive. And the money that I'd collected through this work, through these jobs working from 15, ran out within 1 year. And I didn't have any more money to support myself, right? It's a very tough university. You have to work hard to keep at it. And I saw a lot of my friends who decided to start to work to supplement the living. They were failing, right? They couldn't. And I had this clear vision ahead of myself that if I stay here, if I keep at this dream that I had to study the best university in Italy, I'm not going to finish university. I will become one of the other students that have been here for 10 years and are still in year 3 or year 4,
Wow.
failing every exam because they have to work for the living. I packed my luggage and I went straight back home, and I threw out that dream away. And I told my mom, that is not my future. I'm not going to work in McDonald's to finish a university that will take 10 years. So that was another bold move that I made, to a point, right? Just pivoting, just being aware that your dream and what you thought was a dream, once you are in there, you really question yourself, is this it? And then have the courage to just pivot again. And I did. And I left behind that dream. And, even all the money that I'd saved, you kind of was gone, because I spent all the money to make a living for the first year. But I never regret that, right? It gave another kind of strength into me that I can go anywhere in any country. I can start all over. I can build a life, and I can go somewhere else again if I want to.
That's an interesting point too, because most people talk about having a dream and then going after it and being relentless and then achieving it. But sometimes in life, we do all that, and then we're down that path, and we reassess, and we go, this isn't going the way I want it to, or this isn't, achievable the way I thought I could do it, and we reassess and we pivot and we make changes. And that sounds like a point in your life you made a big pivot point, and you go, hey, I put a year in, it was great, but I'm going to have to pivot and do something else and find another way to get to the goals of my life. And I think that's you got to be pretty strong to be able to do that.
I think so, right? And I'm a big believer that once you have, a vision of where you want to go, or some sort of idea, like the universe helps you to get there. And when I was in this point in, 1 year into my university, or a bit more, thinking that I can't continue like this, like my money's running out, I need to start to work full time. If I work full time, I won't go to university. I came here for the university. I then came here to work full time in a McDonald's or in a fast food. So what do I do? And I went back home on a 1 week holiday. I think it was Christmas time, probably. It was Christmas time, right? So I went back home for Christmas and New Year. And chance encounter, I met the CEO of Vodafone in an art gallery. I was young. He was with his bodyguard, who my mom knew, because my mom actually was the babysitter of his little son at the kindergarten. So they started to talk to each other, and I started to talk to the CEO of Vodafone. I didn't know who he was, in English. So we had a very good conversation about school and art and this art gallery. And he turns around and he said, if you ever look for a job, pass by my office and I might have a job for you. And at that point in time, I still didn't know he was the CEO of Vodafone. And in that moment, I said, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to him, I'm taking a job, and I'm packing my bags and I'm leaving Italy. And that's exactly what I did. I printed my CV the next day, went to the office of the CEO of Vodafone, and I said, I'm that girl that you met yesterday. Here's my CV. I want a job. You offered me a job. I'm here for the job. And
Wow.
I did get a job actually with Vodafone, which I stayed for almost 10 years.
Nice. And along the way, I mean, I know you got your MBA eventually, so you did finish your
I did.
undergraduate. You got your bachelor's.
Yes, I did. I finished economics. I started all over again and I finished it, which I loved as a degree, whilst working full time in Vodafone. So that there were interesting times doing both university full time and working in Vodafone full time. But it gave me everything I needed. It gave me stability, money, a very good corporate kind of career to build the foundations. And I knew I wanted to do the MBA. It also gave me the options, right? I had enough savings to actually think I can go and do my MBA anywhere in Europe. Where would I go? I was considering Sweden, not Italy anymore. I was maybe like the Nordics, like Sweden, England. I applied in a few universities. I got accepted in all of them. And I chose one that I could afford, right? I got some good ones as well, which were too expensive. So I said, I want to do my MBA. I want to do it properly. I don't want to work for 2 years whilst I do the MBA because I've worked since I was 15. And that's how I came to the UK. My MBA in international management brought me to London, and the rest is history. I never left.
Well, Evisa, something you said that I don't think is the case in Europe, or at least not as much. In the US, a lot of kids apply to multiple universities. They get accepted, but especially upper middle class kids, they're like, okay, it doesn't matter if it's expensive. Mom and dad are going to pay. And I always I go, you should have some skin in the game, going into these things. I actually went to community college, which is like a kind of a local university for my first 2 years, just because it was much more affordable. And then I transferred to like a major university for my last 2 years, just to find a way to not be a burden on my family and my parents, because they couldn't afford to send me to a big university at the time either. So it's just interesting because I don't in the is it the same thing in Europe in a way? Do you think that some young professionals, young kids take university for granted?
Yes, it certainly does, right? Like, I've got 2 children. My daughter is 16. She'll be in university in 2 years. Will she have to go through the same thought process and choices that I had to go to? Absolutely not, right? Like the world is an oyster in a way. You talk about starting in life, you talk about equity or equality. Even, she's my daughter and we had very different starts, right? Like she has got everything she needs. A great education in London, private education. She can go anywhere she wants at the basis, to your point, that, mom and dad will support her. And probably a lot of kids, middle class and above, are in the same position. But then you've got very young, bright children, especially from different countries like Albania or other countries that are not as economically developed, that they have to make those tough choices. They have to apply for scholarships. I applied for scholarships, right? I couldn't afford to pay the full price, so I had to be at top of my game in terms of studies and grades to get the scholarship, because I didn't want to go in great universities. I knew I belonged there, but then how do you get yourself there, right? So the grinding that I had to go through, my own children will not have to go through. So it is a reality, and that's why I'm so passionate in a way about giving people an opportunity, right? Giving people a chance to prove themselves, either at work or in university. People that want to be there, that will work hard for it. It's about giving them the opportunities, and not everyone can navigate easily the complex world, right, that we live in.
Agreed. It's even though I went to a community college my first 2 years, I applied for a bunch of little, I call them baby scholarships, because they all kind of added up and allowed me to do it very economically. And I stayed home. So it's, I don't know. It's tough because on one hand, if I don't have children, Evisa, but if I did, I probably would give them the world as well. But I want them to kind of learn to fight for stuff and to realize things, that we're lucky that we have these things and to earn these things. And it's I think it's a challenge for a lot of people out there these days. How do you give your kid everything in the world that you want to give them, but also give them the education to feel like they work for it?
Yeah, it's not hard to navigate. It's not easy, right, to navigate it. It's hard to your point as a parent, as a both myself and my husband. We are self-made, successful people, right? We didn't come from backgrounds or money. Like our parents were blue collar. In a post-communist Albania, so there's a lot of layers there on how much we had to achieve in our lifetime and the depth, right, to be where we are today. And the best thing that we can do for our children, which we try to do, is we teach them the language, the culture, and we tell them stories. I think the human mind and the human race is very geared towards accepting stories, and sometimes they seem entertaining to them, right, our stories of our childhood and what we had to go through, but we tell them these stories consistently so that they don't forget that we're not talking about 3 generations away. It's their mom and dad who had to go through these, hardships in life in a way, even though back then they didn't feel like hardships to me. To me, they just felt like choices. You have to be pragmatic, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
either you do this or you do that. It's very black and white, right? I never felt like I was going through hardships in my life. I just felt that I had choices to make and I had to make the right choice and move forward. But yeah, it's stories. I think that's the best way, right? That you keep perspective. It's storytelling in a way that resonates.
I think it's a great point. All right, so you come to the UK for your MBA. You decide to stay in the UK. Obviously, you're even though that the UK is multicultural, it's got a little bit of everything. But did you feel like it was harder, having, coming from a different country, having a different background, having a little bit of accent? Did that make things tougher for you? And how did you overcome those?
Um, I have a very strong mindset as a person, right? And maybe I was born with it, or a combination of nature and nurture, right? I was certainly born with it. I was nurtured by my mom, absolutely, to believe and to give 110% in everything that I did. Um, my father died when I was very young, right? So again, there are things that shape you in life that maybe make you who you are.
Right.
But um, when I think about, you know, let's go back to the question. Let's go back to the question, Carlos. Take a step back. Where do you want me to go with that question?
Wherever you want. I I don't want to lead the witness. What do you feel like talking about? Because sometimes
Yeah,
it's a close topic to the heart in a way. It is for me since my parents immigrated, and I feel very fortunate and lucky. I feel like I won the lottery that I was lucky enough to be born here and have all this opportunity.
yeah, and I wasn't, right? I came to the UK when I was 25, 26 years old. Um, my husband came to the UK when he was 19, 20 years old, right? So you can't say that we are kind of immigrants in this society, right? And we have to build ourselves up. I never like to, talk about the fact that, I'm a woman or I'm in a minority, but it is the reality. And I've realized through the years that it is important to talk about it, not because they impacted me, right? I never had that kind of mentality of there is bias in everything that we do. And of
Hmm.
course, to your point, like the moment I enter a room and I don't look like the rest of the people, right? There's an accent there. People can straight away in the first 30 seconds form an opinion in your head. And quite often people try to guess where I'm from. And I get all sorts of things, right? From, you know, I don't know, like from Russia to Argentina to Spain to Italy. No one ever guesses Albania, but okay. So that is very real. And the reason why, I start to talk more about the identity and who we are, and living at the intersection of these identities that you have to form, right? Who the world sees you as you are and who you believe in yourself that you are. I talk about it because through the years and as I've progressed in my career, colleagues, younger people, I always get messages that, like you inspire me, or it's so great to see you doing that. Or I remember, 10 years ago when you were at this level and you are at this level. I never think about those things. But realistically, the point that you can inspire someone or you can give people hope and optimism that it can be achieved, even if you are a female in a very male dominated world like I am, even if you are not, British born, even if you don't come from a private education, right? Even despite all of those things, you can still get there. And if that story inspires people, I'm happy to talk about it, right? I'm happy to talk about it with you and to be a bit more vulnerable about those things. Yes, the biases have been there consistently in a remark, in a, I remember once I was in Ireland in a meeting with one of the big four firms, and the MD of that, he came 10 minutes late. So we had started the meeting. I was there with some of my team members. He came late, so he missed the introduction. He missed the fact that I was a leader. And straight away, he came in the room, he sat down, and he started to address the male guy who was a member of my team, reporting to me, started to address to him and talk to him about business straight away. So these are some of the things that you do encounter consistently in your career, and you just have to move over. You have got a choice. Either you let that impact you or you gain control. And what I do in situations like that, I regain control. I take the situation back in my hands. And that's the way that I go about it. I don't let it affect me deeply emotionally.
I love that. I think that's awesome. Speaking of which, you are a female in a very male dominated tech world. And better yet, you're a female leader. Like you just, not just, an individual contributor. What advice might you have for other females that, because I think we do need more females in tech. It's not only is it dominated more on the sales side, but even our customer side is very male dominated. And I think we need more women in tech. Any advice that you have for other females out there on trying to, succeed in that market?
It's absolutely a tough market. Technology moves very fast. The pace of the companies that I've worked for has been tremendous. And it comes with certain choices or sacrifices, right? People call it sacrifices, I call them choices that you have to make. Because not only I build my career, I build a family at the same time, right? I finished the MBA, I got married, we started to create the family, have the first child. One of the choices that I made, which I talk very openly about, I left 10 years between my first child and my second child. And that was a very cautious choice that my husband supported me, because I knew if I had two small kids next to each other, I would not have progressed in the career in the way that I did. I was working in this type of environments. I wanted to be there. I wanted to move. I didn't want to be judged by the fact that I might become pregnant again or have two children. And people think those things, right? I've had people tell me, how do you do it? My wife can't do it, right? So sometimes you project on the other person your own experiences in life. So I made this choice, and I've made consistent choices that I don't regret, because I've always, had this mentality that life gives you options. You choose the option and you go for it, right? And my, kind of ask of young female, because it is a tough role, especially in sales, especially in building go-to-market teams, which is what I'm doing, is be very clear on who you are. The society expects you to be a mom, right? Your husband expects you to be a wife. I know I can be all of these, but more importantly, I know that I'm a very ambitious person, and that's what fills my cup. So for me to be the best mom and the best wife, I need to pursue my ambitions. I need to pursue my goals in life. That is who I am. And I think quite often I meet young females or young leaders who are in this stage of their life where they feel that they have to make choices. They feel that they have to choose pursuing a career or staying home with the kids. or maybe taking a less fast-paced job, right? To settle. It doesn't matter whatever choice you make. Just don't have regrets, right? I've also met colleagues who have regrets, right? They've made certain choices, they sacrificed for the sake of the husband or the family, and they regret it, right? To me, it's like, don't regret it. Whatever you go for it, and then that's the most important thing, right? Don't think about too many obstacles; they'll always be there. Make your choice and go for it.
I think you got a great, kind of passionate and motivating story, because a lot of times people think of their challenges, the biases that they face, and they become excuses of why they can't. Where, like you said, you look at these things as, hey, they are what they are. I have to make my own choices. I'm not going to let it stop me from getting to where I want to be. And I think that's very inspiring, not only to women, but to anybody listening to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Evisa, so tell me a little bit more about yourself, or anything. I know we've been talking about you and your journey. Is there any, more about yourself you would like to share with the audience?
I think we'll go back to the opening, right? You mentioned the Camino de Santiago, and that's another side of myself that I have tried to nurture more lately, because life is about balance. And with my nature, I know very well I'm hyper focused on results as a person, right? I'm very goal oriented, very focused on winning, that's who I am. But also, being this way and knowing who you are is very important, right? Because then you can work with yourself. It's also very consuming. It can be very consuming. So what I've tried to do in the last few years, especially, is to carve out more time for mindfulness, more time for breaks. And the Camino de Santiago that we opened about, right, which I posted on LinkedIn, and a lot of people actually reached out following that, was on my mind since I was 16 years old. And I read the book by Paulo Coelho. He made it very famous in the pilgrimage. And thinking about that, right? Spain, it's only 2 hours away from London. I could have done it any time, but I was always very busy pursuing these big career goals and, financial stability and, buying properties and all the things that I've been doing. It came to a point where, my husband especially, he helps me a lot with that. He consistently talks to me about, how about enjoying life? How about actually enjoying all this winning, all of these things that you're doing, right? What does it take? And I've tried to explore different things, like what calms me down, right? What gives me different perspective. And I've come to the conclusion that these hiking trips, for now, that's what works for me. So the Camino de Santiago was one of those, right? It was 1 week with no laptop, just the phone. I try to be off the phone for all day as we are hiking, focusing on nature, conversations with people. People are very friendly, right? Everyone does that route for spiritual reason. So you meet people that are in the same mindset, that want to talk, want to engage. And I loved it, right? It absolutely gives me perspective. So I think it's important that, we also talk about the human side of leadership or of achievement. We all need things, in my view, that fill your cup in a different way, right? Apart from financial gains or job titles or those career paths. Yes, they are important. They are very important to me. But perspective is everything. And probably that's something that, again, I need to talk more about, right?
I think you're right on the money. And maybe it's just timing, but, in life, we all talk about being the best husband or wife. We talk about being the best at our career and position. But, you also need to be the best you for those other two bests to be great, right? Right. And you doing El Camino, I think, was awesome. And, I think, I don't know, maybe I've turned around a little bit. I've always put work and family first versus me. And these days I'm trying to have a little more balance in my life. So I love the story.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, last two questions. What's your 1% edge? What are you working on to get 1% better every day in your own journey?
My 1% edge is pace. I move fast. That is a superpower. And clarity. I think, in especially in the last few kind of jobs and roles that I've done, I've realized that's my superpower, right? I move at pace and I bring lots of clarity to the teams, to the processes, to where we're going. I'm honing down on those. At certain points in my career, right, I was told I move too fast. You have to slow down. Yes, there is truth in that, right? You need to bring people along. But also, your superpowers are who they are, who make you you. So I'm trying to, be true to who I am in those two things and make sure that pace and clarity bring the benefit to the team as well, and everyone understands. I talk more openly now about that, and I think that's something that a lot more leaders, and I always incentivize my own leaders to think about their values, who they are, talk openly with the teams about how they like to operate, what things they don't like to operate. So for me, that's it, right? Pace and clarity is where I'm honing down, especially in the current role that I have. Those two are significant to make sure that the team aligns. We have got big goals ahead of us. We are scaling up the business. That's where I'm doubling down now, Carlos.
Awesome. All right. So, Evisa, it's been a great conversation. If our listeners would want to reach out to you, get to know you better, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I am becoming more and more active on LinkedIn recently. I think it's a fantastic mix of social platform with a professional edge. I'm not very active on the other social platforms, so LinkedIn would be fantastic. You can always reach out to me at evisa.kekezi@workiva.com. That's my work email address. Always open to conversations about, work or anything to do with business and tech and building and scaling companies. I love those topics and I'm very passionate about.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. The time flew by.
It did. All right, everyone. That does it for this week's episode. If you found value in our conversation, please comment back, subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. And greatly appreciate your support out there. We're getting more and more listeners and subscribers, and I really appreciate the support from everyone out there. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Thanks, Evisa.
Thank you.